we've asked folks to come and talk about local issues, community level issues that they deal with on a daily basis in response to shale energy development in their communities, in their counties. I will introduce each one. Each member of the panel here will have 10 minutes to give his or her remarks, and then at the end we'll open it up for questions, and those questions will be for all of us on the stage here. The first speaker will be Judge Roger Harmon from Johnson County, Texas. And I'm glad Judge is here because, as I told him during the break, that my students and I did the first sociological study of shale energy development back in 2005. And much of the social scientific literature that is out there today roots to that study. And we conducted that study in Johnson County and in Wise County. So we have a lot of data, from about 11 years ago. And I'm very interested to hear Judge Harmon's perspective today. You know, what's happening in Johnson County and how Johnson County has progressed over those 11 years. So we'll start with Judge Harmon.
Thank you very much. I'm very honored to be with you today, and thank you for the invitation. I told Jeff when he first contacted me that I looked at all the people that were on this panel, and I said, gosh, I'm not in this league, I tell you. But I will give you a perspective of how the Barnett Shale has affected Johnson County on a local level. You know, as county judge, we wear a lot of different hats, and one of the major hats that we wear is being over the financing of the county, especially in your large counties, well, in all counties, but more so in your large counties. I tell a lot of people, I was elected to judge in 1995, and I tell a lot of people the reason I'm still county judge is because of the Barnett Shale. The revenues have been tremendous for us, and as most elected officials, we're sometimes elected by the perception of performance. So the perception was there. Now, how good the performance was, I really don't know. But I'll ride that horse as far as I can ride it, is what I've also told people. I'm really glad I came to your whole meeting today because I've learned a lot from it. I learned a lot of the issues that you'll be studying to make recommendations for. And I noticed also that some of these areas that you will be studying, we certainly have dealt with on a local basis. Water, for instance. I have no knowledge of quality of water and what you'll be studying, but I do know that water certainly had an impact on our county. In fracking a well, I believe it takes 2 million plus gallons of water to frack a well. And the gas companies, and I hope I don't step on any toes today, but the gas companies were coming in and offering to drill freshwater wells into our aquifers, and at no cost to the landowner. Well, immediately our aquifers started dropping. And so as county judge, guess who gets that telephone call? I do. And so we certainly had a lot of discussion about water issues, and it became actually a problem because a lot of people were having to lower their, now I'm going by hearsay, so I did not do my own studies on it, but a lot of people were having to lower their wells to get the water. So that became an issue. Believe it or not, air quality became an issue. Johnson County is in a non-attainment area, and to get federal grant money for transportation, John, we have to qualify air quality. I serve on the North Central Texas Council of Government Transportation Committee, And money is extremely important to us in transportation projects, so air quality became an issue. And then after that, once the companies came in and started setting up, the damage to our roads became tremendous. County roads are not designed for 80,000-pound vehicles. And when you start putting that much traffic on those roads, you're going to have a lot of road damage. Since 2000 and I think it really started about 2002, we have over 4,500 gas wells in Johnson County. So we had a lot of activity. And that was a big issue that the county commissioners had to deal with in the repair of their roads. Also through that, I was selected to serve on a committee, John, 3 years ago, I guess, to try to find ways that we could get some money from the state legislature to repair our roads, because we had significant road damage because of the oil and gas industry. And so through that, we were successful, and we picked up $234 million, something like that, for county road damages, which has helped us. So that was another issue that we had to deal with on a local basis. And then one of the major issues we had to deal with was safety. We noticed right off the bat that the number of fatalities that we had in Johnson County were increasing. And so the court got together. We agreed to hire 4 what we call CVI, commercial vehicle inspectors, to help out TxDOT, Texas Department of Public Safety, because they didn't have the money to increase their work number of people they employed. So we hired 4 to help out on that and train those 4 people to start inspecting these trucks, because a lot of them were running illegally in regards to brakes and overloads and different issues. And so we had to deal with that on a local basis. And that was, I think, our death rate, our fatality rate did go back down because of that, because we were serious. We did not want the fatalities in our areas. Now, on the socioeconomic area of the county, it was tremendous to us. From 2006 through today, we have had we've had a little over $20 billion of total values. Now that's combined values over 11 years. So the revenue has been good. Now the expenses to the road repair, I'm not for sure. We have not done a study on that. I believe Judge Fowler in DeWitt County did a very extensive study on road damages. He hired, or his county hired, a consultant to come in and see how much road damage was being done to their county roads. And he also did a very good job as this additional revenue came in. We have in Texas called truth in taxation, that if you go over the rollback rate, you're subject to have your taxes rolled back by the voters. Well, I told Judge Fowler, I said, Judge Fowler, stick all the money you can back, because you're going to need it. And he did that. I think they put back like $59 million in reserves. And today, they're better off because of that. Now, this has been a roller coaster ride for Johnson County and for me as county judge. We're down today to a total mineral value of $573 million. That was our tax rolls this year. In 2009, we had $3,667 million of taxable minerals. Now that was a good ride, I promise you, because we had the money to make everybody happy, and that's why I said earlier, I believe that's why I'm still county judge today, that we met the needs of our county. So, with that said, I'll yield to Judge Bradford here, and would be glad to answer any questions that you may have. Thank you.
I'd like to echo what Judge Harmon says. He's done a magnificent job. My hometown is Fort Worth, Texas, so I kind of pay attention to what's going on around there. But I went to Midland to work for an individual and signed a 2-year contract that has now lasted 37 years. So I guess I'm there. But give you a little overview. Midland County is doing well. And I can say that straight-faced because, honest to goodness, during the boom in 14 and early part of 15, it was out of hand. We could not keep up with the needs of our community, the safety of our community, and frankly, trying to outguess what the next wave was going to be. We were looking at platting of subdivisions 2 a week. We normally see about 2 a quarter. So that kind of activity was, while we applaud it financially, it caused great concerns. But these are statistics as of September of this year. Back during the boom in 14, 474 rigs running in the Permian Basin. There's currently 187 in 16. But this is the figure we want, and that's the efficiency of the rig. And what we mean by that is, what does it return for the hole it punches in the ground? Efficiency rates in 14, excuse me, about 179%. Now we're seeing numbers in the 500s. What drove that? Well, it was driven by science, technology, and as we sit down with our partners in the oil and gas business in the Permian Basin, they tell us what they need, we tell them what we can do, and we end up with a compromise. But we always leave the meeting stating we're not going to hurt the industry or the basic wealth that provides for our living. So it truly is a partnership. We have a unemployment rate of 4.6. The state number for September is 4.7. But it's these efficiencies in these rigs and the fracking and the water use that has led to the successes we're seeing now. Do we expect to have the same amount of population, working population, which reached, and we have 3 population numbers we look at. Monday through Friday, during the boom, that number was in the 170,000. Then we have those residents who were in an RV in front of somebody's house or out in the yard on the farm. That was about 159. And now we have a pretty static population of about 144,000. Why the large number? The large number was created by these oil and gas service companies. They would bring folks in from all over the country, and they would rent whole hotels, pay cash, 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. And they change the crews every 12 hours. So they're running 2 crews out of every hotel room. That's how we can count those numbers like that. But what it led to, much like your county, it led to some incredible financial times. At one point, we had a tax rate down at 12 cents. Right now, we just passed a tax rate of 15.5 cents. So it makes Midland County, for those taxpayers out there, it is now 11 out of 14 years we've had the lowest tax rate. That's not because we're geniuses. It's because we got some nice stuff under the dirt, and these companies want it. The thing I'd like to say about the companies in Midland, they embrace all of the major oil companies in the U.S., some high-profile independents such as Concho, and actually Pioneers classified that way, and in some annals, Apache to some degree. But we still have the major players. But what we've seen happen in the last 2 years particularly is an influx of foreign money. The National Chinese Oil Company now owns 25% of a drilling project in Midland County. It will be the largest drilling project we've ever seen. We have more rigs running in Midland County than anywhere in the country because of this influx of capital. These are all great things to say. The best one that we're enjoying right now, though, for our community and our social needs is home ownership. Apartments came galore, but they all came in 1 month. So there was high competitiveness for high dollar apartments. And as the market changed, houses got cheaper. So we're seeing people move out of apartments into home ownership. That adds to our values. That also tells us they're going to be there a while. The people that were laid off during the boom, the high technical people, they're still in our community. They are waiting on the next cycle or the next opportunity. And we firmly believe it's already started. Pioneer, in particular, has an innovative program where they are looping water. They're laying a water pipeline to all their drilling sites that is interconnected. So if they're using money to buy water to frack with in the southwest part of their operations, they can move it to the due east part of their operations in about 20 hours through the pipeline. That is an incredible improvement in water usage. We now require, surprisingly, counties our size didn't have this restriction. We chose it on our own. We now require engineering on runoffs of any kind. Anywhere you're going to be using liquid, we want to see where you're going to send it. We want to see what the holding ponds look like. And they're all lined. They're no longer just clay ponds. But the other side, and the most important thing to me at least, damage of roadways. Think about this. Vertical and horizontal wells, technologically different, cost-wise, substantially different. A vertical well in the Permian Basin will cost you a little under $3 million right now. A horizontal well will start at about $8.5 million and go up. The multiples on the well, fracking, and treatment are as follows. Whatever the number of trucks on a vertical well, it is 9 times that amount of truck traffic on a horizontal well. And if you're going horizontal laterals, north, south, east, and west, which some of them do, you can take that again times each lateral. So we took our wonderful sales tax. We are the beneficiary of a public vote that said, let's have some sales tax. And we labeled it pump jacks and pizzas because the city didn't understand why our numbers were greater. And we said, how much tax do you pay when you have a pizza? And how much do you pay when you buy a pump jack? And that's became known as the pump jack and pizza conversation in our community. It has enabled Midland County to invest $50 million of money that didn't come from property taxes in the last 26 months in our road development. The difference in that road development is we've gone to our partners in the industry and said, tell us where you're going. What are your lease requirements? Where is that rig moving? So we beat them there, and we build high-impact roads with the proper drainage. And John, thank you for your help at TxDOT when we were starting to initiate this. So as of September, we're one of 3 counties in the state of Texas that have all their roads paved to specifications that we came up with the industry. It's been spectacular for us. We just happen to be, as you kindly said, we just happen to be in the seats when all this happened. We look forward to many more years of it. And the one thing we are real excited about is the willingness of industry to share their technology instead of hold it close to their chest and try to keep it as a competitive edge. They were sharing it for the benefit of the U.S. And what that's led to, flaring. In West Texas, if you were on the interstate headed to El Paso, you could tell where Midland was because of all the flares. Burning gas caps off so we could produce the product. You won't see that anymore. We've had a tremendous influx of pipelines taking that gas that was burned is going to Corpus Christi, and it's now being exported. That's what good, thoughtful planning does. And the project we're most interested in right now is we still haven't solved the rail car safety issue, which is paramount in our area because our rail running from Los Angeles to Fort Worth is 100% full. And those crossings, we probably have more people killed at crossings or roads approaching crossings. And I'm happy to say that Burlington and the rest of the rail companies that have been great participants with us. We're gradually getting some realignments and some different signal lights. But that's the part of safety that we'll address in the Permian Basin next. So with that, see.
Thank you. I have a slightly different perspective than probably everybody else that has talked today. My name is Christi LaJeunesse. I am the Executive Director of 6 housing authorities. I work with low-income families, public housing. At this time, I have housing authorities in 6 counties, all of them in the Eagle Ford Shale area. I have 823 affordable housing unit opportunities. Because of Eagle Ford Shale, we have lost 200 of those affordable housing opportunities through our Section 8 voucher program. It's been a wild ride. So as I said, I kind of have a different perspective. I've absolutely seen the financial impact and the amazing things that have happened in our communities, except for the roads. The roads suck, so we'll just leave it there. You know, we've had, you know, the jobs have been amazing, you know, the income has been amazing. But I'll tell you the true stories, what's actually happened to many of our families. I started working in Kenedy in 1996, and in 1996, I could rent a 2-bedroom house on the Section 8 program for $300. So that's like amazing, right? We get all the way up to 2009, same 2-bedroom house, rents for about $425. I have a lady that's lived in this house for a number of years. In 2012, that's about when the boom hit Kenedy. I'm going to speak mostly about Kenedy because that's sort of that's where I live. But it affected all of our areas the same way. But I had a lady that had lived in this house that we were paying $425 a rent for, 82 years old. Time comes around for her to renew her lease, and what does the landlord do? He can get $2,000 for it. So I now have an 82-year-old lady that says, what are you going to do? Well, it's a voucher program, which means, you know, the families are responsible for going and finding their own housing. We do have public housing that we own and manage, but the voucher program's private sector. Apartment complexes. At that point in time, we had one, what you would call a regular conventional apartment complex, and I actually managed that apartment complex for years. We rented 2 bedrooms for $425. In 2012, that same 2-bedroom was renting for $1,200. So was moving to a 1-bedroom apartment that was renting for $900 an option for her? You would think, yes, that just makes sense. Let's move her to the 1-bedroom apartment. But unfortunately, HUD has all these kind of rules and regulations we have, and the maximum amount of money I could pay in 2012 for a 1-bedroom was about $500. So our HUD rules and our fair market rents with HUD in no way kept up with the, you know, increasing rents with the Eagle Ford oil play. On the positive side, I mean, you know, we had the Section 8 program was a real struggle. In Beeville specifically, we did lose over 100 vouchers. On one of our other smaller properties in Nixon, we lost about half the program. You think, but the program was only 13 vouchers, so we lost 7. We lost a little more than half the program, but that's still 7 housing opportunities in Nixon that are gone forever. HUD doesn't ever give us more money to get those housing opportunities back. Positive side, though, we have this crazy thing in the public housing world called flat rent, which is what a lot of you might think of as market rent. So for our public housing program participants, and for those of you that do not know, public housing units are, you pay rent based on your income. So for some of my families, I actually pay them to live there. They get a check every month to live on our property. And I know, crazy, right? Some of our, you know, most of our elderly disabled families pay around $170 a month. That's a fixed amount of, it's 30% for everybody. Other families, with these jobs coming into play, I had one family that lived in Karnes City that was making $160,000 a year, and their flat rent, market rent for that unit was set at $635. So they're making $160,000 a year, paying $635. And they struggle to pay the $635, but that's a whole nother story. They did, however, have an $8,000 television that was 80 inches in like a 12 by 12 living room. So I guess it's all about priorities. But we saw many families, And we just think you get up and go to work, right? That's just what we're taught to do. You get up, you go to work, you work your 40 hours, you get a paycheck. Well, it's not that easy. It's that easy maybe for some of us, but it's not that easy when you don't have the clothes to put on to get there. And that matters, right? You can't just show up, all the pictures from Walmart. You can't show up in your pajamas and your fuzzy house shoes to a job. You need a vehicle to get there. You might have to pay child care. And so pre-oil field boom, $7.25 was not an incentive for many of our families to go to work. They couldn't make it. As soon as they would go to work, they would lose food stamps. They would lose Medicaid. And then all of a sudden they're paying me rent when I was paying them $50 to live there. They'd try working for 2 to 3 months and come in and say, Christi, I gave this working thing a shot, but it's not for me. But along comes Eagle Ford, and all of a sudden, and I'm going to speak for the women because it was very empowering for many of the single moms on my properties to be able to earn $13 an hour. Now it's worth it. To be able to earn $18.25 an hour, and we're all, I'm going to get goosebumps. We're so excited because there are these great, opportunities. They're earning money, and then they go and buy a Mercedes. It's like back to that priority. But it's been very interesting in our communities. The impact on housing, there is not enough housing in these small communities. There is not enough affordable housing in these small communities. The answer to affordable housing has been tax credit. Let's build a tax credit. Let's build a tax credit. And a tax credit property is great, except there are still income rules and limits that come in with a tax credit property. And most of these tax credit properties, the rents are set at 60% of the area median income, right? You guys all love the numbers. So 60% of the area median income. For the families that can actually that make the 60%, the rent's too high for them to be able to afford it. So we've really created this insane, non-affordable, affordable housing situation. And now, I hate to say we need more federal assistance because I don't think that's the answer either. But, we definitely have a broken affordable housing system, especially for our elderly and disabled folks. I really was kind of told to have about 5 minutes, and I'm sort of a by the seat of my pants girl. So if y'all have any questions later, that's great. I will turn it over to Ms. Moczygemba, the superintendent in Karnes City.
Hi, my name's Jeanette Winn Moczygemba, and I am the superintendent of Karnes City ISD. And Karnes City ISD is located, what many say is at the epicenter of the Eagle Ford Shale. If you look at the maps on the Railroad Commission site of the wells drilled and permitted, and then if you do an overlay of the location of our school district on that same map, it's crazy to see just how many wells there are in our district, and you can see why it's said that we're at the epicenter. I'm going to take you on a quick journey of what's happened to our school district over the past 6 years, just some of the highlights of it, just to give you some semblance of what we've gone through. So when I became superintendent, it was the year 2010, and our school district was property poor, as most South Texas districts. Our property values were certified at $270 million. And many of our residents live below the poverty line, and our school enrollment consists of a high percentage of economically disadvantaged students. So early in the next year, in 2011, our board actually approved its first oil lease, which was 40 acres on which our secondary campuses and our athletic facilities reside. So that was new and exciting to us, that we were earning royalties. And that year, as various division orders began rolling in, we also started learning about the many non-participating royalty interests our district owned. We had no idea that that would be coming, and to date I've signed approximately 40 sets of division orders for our school district. Then the next year, in 2011, our property values rose to $600 million, which was an increase of 120%. And that same year, we also experienced a spike in our student enrollment, with most of the growth occurring at the elementary level. Our elementary campus was almost bursting at the seams, and so, as I look back and review the data, I found that the amount of enrollment increase peaked out at about 10%. which doesn't sound like a lot, but it was a lot for us. And it certainly could have been more. We really believe that the lack of affordable housing kept that number in check. I had a number of developers coming in talking to me telling me to get ready, that they were going to build some big subdivisions, and that never panned out for some other reasons. So then we started seeing RV parks pop up, which raised another new question about how to code those students, their residents, in our reporting systems. And we found out that the students living in these RV parks were technically considered to be homeless, which meant additional reporting requirements for us to undertake. And these were students who experienced high mobility rates, and they're historically more difficult to educate. Their achievement levels are lower just because they've not been able to be in a stable educational environment. So at the end of the 2011-2012 school year, we started to experience an above average teacher turnover as well. We lost some to oil field jobs, but because of where we were located, many of the teachers we lost were starting to become wealthy with family mineral leases and royalties. And a lot of those teachers just decided to retire early. So we had a big turnover of teachers. And then in 2012, our property values rose again to $2.1 billion, which was an increase of 250% from the year before. And my business manager and I had to get used to the word billion, which previously did not exist in our vocabulary. And because our property values had risen so high, that November we were required by the Texas Education Agency to conduct a wealth equalization election. So explaining the rationale of this election to our community that had been property poor for the past few decades was not easy. So the thought of giving away this newfound local revenue was difficult for them to grasp. And now we were asking them to decide how to give our money away. That's what you do in a wealth equalization election. So, and of course, any of you who have some understanding of our current school finance system know that our extra revenue generated by these increased property values really isn't ours to keep. It all goes back to the state in the form of recapture to equalize our wealth back down to our low funding level that was set for us back in 2006, thus a wealth equalization election. So in my conversations with other school districts experiencing the dramatic rise in property values and the resulting dramatic increase in tax collections, a few of us caution the others not to spend any of this extra money because at some point, the boom would reside and we would need this revenue to survive the fall in property values. Now at that time, when we were having those discussions, we were thinking that the boom would last at least 20 years. A little bit of foreshadowing here. So by this time, we were already experiencing difficulty keeping our hourly maintenance and custodial employees as well. It was so easy for them to find higher paying jobs in the energy sector. So we raised our starting hourly wage from $8 an hour, and I know that doesn't sound like much, but we were a poor district, so we raised that to $11 an hour just to keep pace with our neighboring districts who had raised their wages that high. So that was a huge increase for such a small, low-funded district like us, but we were desperate. We had to have people. By 2013, the boom was in full swing, and representatives from our Karnes County Bank asked to meet with us. Historically, our district's depository contract had been with our local bank. During that meeting, as we sat in my office, we chuckled as the bank executives expressed concern about the massive amounts of money we were depositing into their institution. And then they followed with, "Thank you, but we don't want your money." So in March of 2013, we entered into an agreement with Karnes County Bank to deposit our excess funds in the larger Frost Bank. And after a year of deposits into Frost Bank, that institution itself expressed disbelief to our Karnes County Bank that such a small school district could be generating so much tax collections. In 2013 then, our property values this time rose to $4.1 billion, which was a 97% increase from the year before. And because we experienced even more teacher turnover than in the previous year, our board approved a new professional salary scale for teachers and administrators to begin that school year, which was our attempt to offset the rise in living costs, especially housing, and to prevent more of our teachers from leaving the profession to enter higher paying oil field jobs. So at the end of the 2013-2014 school year, our district then made its first recapture payment to the state in the amount of $24 million. And to put this in perspective, we annually operate on an $11 million budget. It takes $11 million to run our school district for a year, and then on top of that, we had to pay $24 million to the state. In 2014 then, that summer, our property values rose yet again, topping it out this time at $6.5 billion, a 56% increase from the year before. We held a bond election to finance $45 million of much-needed facility improvements, and this seemed like more than enough money for our building needs until we realized that the price of construction had skyrocketed in our area due to the boom. Nevertheless, with some careful planning, we were able to design and build everything we promised the taxpayers. And at the end of that 2014-2015 school year, our district then paid $51 million in recapture to the state. And remember, we only spent about $11 million to operate for a year. Later that year, our property values did fall in 2015. They fell 9% to $5.9 billion. And this past summer, they fell to $3.2 billion, which was a 42% drop. To date, we paid approximately $125 million in recapture payments to the state. You may have heard about some other Eagle Ford Shale districts who are suffering financially because of the downturn, school districts. Fortunately, even though none of us foresaw the boom happening so soon, our district, Karnes City ISD, had planned for it. And with the exception of still living with the slightly increased operating costs due to our payroll increases, we're going to come out okay. But this situation has not been for the faint of heart. But if I had to look at it, as I mentioned at lunchtime around our lunch table, all in all, the net effect for us has been positive, but because we ended up with some new facilities that there's no way we could ever have financed with our property values when I started out at $270 million.
Okay.
That's it.
That's all she has, okay. At this point, I think we will open it up for questions. We have two mics, two individuals floating around with the microphones, and we'll take questions.
Please raise hands so we can be sure you're on our recording. Yeah.
Seeing I'm on the socioeconomic team, I'm going to ask a question or two. I didn't hear anything about law enforcement impacts of the boom and bust. I'd like some, comments on that, how that's impacted, I think probably all of your areas. Also, Jeanette, I wanted to ask you, with the property taxes having escalated to the extent that they did, were the rates reduced at all for the landowners, or did they just continue to pay more and more property tax because of the increase in price, in value of the properties?
School districts don't lower their rates the same as cities or counties. It would be disastrous for us to do that. So we did not lower our rates. And again, if we had to increase them, we would certainly have to have an election to increase them. But we did not lower our rates. So yes, our citizens, our constituents did have to pay more because of the increase in property values.
And the first part of the question about
Law enforcement. As far as our school district, there was really no significant effect on our school district with the needs of law enforcement.
Karnes County itself doubled the amount of deputies that we'd had previously. I can say from the housing authority perspective and also just being a resident in the community, theft, break-ins escalated dramatically. I am not going to say that it was, oil field related. I think it was just, it was just timing. But not Karnes City, but Kenedy increased the police force as well. We'd had, I think, 6 police officers, and now we have 13 to 14 police officers.
We experienced a need for a new jail due to overcrowding under state rules. Put it to the voters, they approved it. We invested heavily in salaries and equipment. We changed our cycle on buying equipment to every 2 years instead of 4 years, which we still maintain today. The sad effect when you talk about law enforcement, and it's kind of off to the side. What we experienced with our boom was absolutely overrun family courts with some kind of social issue within the family. It may be an 80-inch TV. The perspective of what was going on was out of whack. And the next thing that showed up was in the, unfortunately, not proud of it, but excessive child abuse cases.
In Johnson County, of course, the 4 CVI inspectors we hired also were involved in they worked through our sheriff's department. I didn't come prepared knowing how many additional officers we hired, but we did increase our number of deputies in Johnson County. Our courts at that time did increase a substantial amount of cases in their courts. And we could pretty much target it to the oil and gas industry, some of the workers. But overall, it wasn't really that bad. We did have other areas in our county clerk's office, and this doesn't really go with your question, but our county clerk's office was overrun with land people that were coming in and running deeds of records on the property to lease it. So we had to increase the number of people we had in the county clerk's office. We had to certainly increase the number of computer terminals that we had in our clerk's office. So, but the revenue for that covered our expenses. That was another big loss that we had. Once the boom was over, see, all of ours was natural gas. Judge Bradford dealt, and your county also, in Karnes County, it's primarily oil. Natural gas fell out a lot sooner than what we thought it would as in valuations. So it started decreasing after the 2009 year. 2010, it dropped substantially, and like I said earlier, we're down to $573 million. So we feel like we're on the bottom end of natural gas values. So I'm hoping that all we have in the future are good times. So that's what we're looking for. But it takes a lot of planning. We learn from our counterparts, especially in West Texas, because we would go to our conferences and talk to our commissioners and judges in West Texas, and it was either feast or famine. It was all dependent on the pricing of natural gas or the pricing of oil. And so because we had learned that early on, in our planning process, we got together as a commissioner's court and planned for that fall. So we were not caught off guard when it did fall. But it did fall, I promise you. And we're, $3 million less in revenue today than what we were. So, and that's a lot when you have our total tax base in Johnson County. I brought that with me, I believe. Our total tax base in Johnson County during the good years, 2009 was the best year. Total tax base in the county was $14,652,267,000. Today, it's $12,823,000,000. So we've offset some of it by new growth, but we did lose a substantial amount in the mineral values.
It's our opinion in Midland, I'm going to take up your battle a little bit if you don't mind.
Sure.
We're a fortunate community. We're able to do things a lot of communities aren't. But our school district is paying a Robin Hood fee that puts them on the cusp of defaulting on their bond covenants because of the way Robin Hood is figured. School districts get the worst brunt of this up and down. Housing comes right behind it, but school districts take a hit because we can operate within parameters. They're currently 8% rollbacks, and we hope it stays at that. But school districts don't have that luxury. We've actually put in tax exemptions, which are not required in counties, but we give $40,000 to 65 and older, and we give $5,000 or the larger of 3% of the value of your assets to under 65. We just think it's the right thing to do. School districts take the brunt.
Denny has a question.
I just retired from a company that operates in all 4 of your areas. And first of all, I say thank you for the communities and the support it's given a producer in there. And so I know in the pre-planning of a lot of things that went into looking at what was going to be, what plans were, we questioned ourselves, what impact would that have on the community? So my question to you is, what did you get cooperation from the oil companies, and what could be done better for a communication basis? You know, we're making recommendations supposedly to regulatory bodies, but what kind of communication, what kind of things could we say to the industry to say what's going to prepare us better to understand industry business and prepare municipalities and counties for what we see as our future plans?
I did have, at the school district, we did have stakeholder relations people from the various oil companies start coming into my office probably 2011, I think in the year 2011. And some of them would come in and say, just introduce themselves, I'm here, if you need anything, here's how you can get in touch with me. Other oil companies, their stakeholder relations representatives took an active involvement in our school district. They would come and present assemblies on safety with, you know, because now we've got all these pump jacks and tanks in our community that the kids hadn't ever seen before, and, you know, safety and dangers, you know, just basically stay off of them and why. So they would do these educational assemblies for our students and also donate money to our education foundation. And the things that, and I'm thinking when they came in, they were mostly talking to us, though, about, you know, when they wanted to tell us this is what you should expect, it was more, you're going to have a lot of people coming in, a lot of probably enrollment growth in your school district, and so you just need to be ready for that and plan for that. It would have been nice, but I don't think they knew how really it would affect our school district. And you know, the financial issue that we have right now, the financial piece, you know, 20 years from now it may be different. I hope we have a new school finance system by then, but I was hoping we'd have a new one now, which we don't. But it would have been helpful if they you know had some you know, been able to talk with someone who'd been through it before from another school district to bring that information to us, as those little things, and those little things that are going to take up your time, like meeting with the stakeholder relations people, meeting with the developers, meeting with the landman. You mentioned the landman. I spent a lot of time on the phone and talking personally with landmen because there were a lot of deeds to properties that had vague language because they were very old, and our school district had a part in the properties, so I had to work with our school district attorneys to get the deed language clarified and then get it approved by our board. So there were a lot of new things that we did experience that we were not warned about.
I'd like to add to that, if I may. Early on, through the whole process, we've kept a good relationship with the oil and gas companies. They have been very good to work with. Early on, natural gas, they're in Johnson County, well, in all counties, natural gas was running over $12 per $1 million cubic feet. And they had a lot of revenue at that time. So did the counties and cities and everyone involved. But they had a lot of revenue to work with. And they promoted a good partnership with the counties and cities. They also, when their cars and vehicles became a certain age, when they would retire them early, they would donate those vehicles to the county and school districts and cities. So they have been a good partner to work with. Now, when the price fell out from under natural gas, then they had to tighten their belt like everyone else because their revenues dropped. And but they've been a good partner overall.
We have worked overtime at changing the conversation from the back end to the front end about where you're going to drill. We can save road cost, we can be a little ahead of it. The thing that's hard for TxDOT and other road planners is leases dictate where you access that point to drill. So we are spending more time with our TxDOT offices after we confer with the companies, so we try to get a little ahead of them as opposed to behind them. The other thing we've encouraged them every time we see them, and they're getting better, is we encourage them to support the local charities because your money's made at the wellhead. So let's support those people that are involved in the communities in every aspect. And the best model we've seen so far is Concho Resources pegs their donations to the barrels produced. So as that price goes up and down, it's already fixed in there. And I mean, they have been stout-hearted sticking to it, and it's been wonderful.
Cal, you have a question?
Yeah, so I know nothing about school finance, but following up on your charitable contribution thing, I'm wondering if a foundations maybe established by industry groups or something could help finance schools without running into Robin Hood problems, or what you think about that, because I'm looking for what are other alternatives to help in these kind of places where suddenly there's a lot of growth.
Well, the amount of money that it would take to help us deal with the Robin Hood finance problems is just astronomical. There's no way, I don't see how, any way that an oil company could.
Money to help you without you having to turn that same money over to Robin?
Could the money be donated?
Donated money, we just went through, excuse me.
No, go ahead, go ahead.
We just went through this in Midland because of the covenant question, and we have an election in October. We had a private foundation. One individual gave $10 million to the school district to keep them running because of what Robin Hood was doing to them, $49 million. That donation is not counted in the Robin Hood formula. Outside money is not counted.
But the $10 million donation is rare.
Yes.
I mean,
Yes.
we welcome our $25,000 donation from the oil company once a year, so.
Yeah. But you put it in perspective when you see drilling like what we're experiencing. Substantial, large number of donations are small compared to the investment they're making. And their kids, their workers are going to school there. But if you make one recommendation, I would urge you to visit with her because she knows it in and out. But school districts absolutely get taken to the cleaners in these deals.
Well, and I won't get on my soapbox here about equity either, so, but when I became superintendent and our property values were very low, at that time, the money that went into the Robin Hood, the recapture, we were actually recipients of some of that money. I mean, that's what helped us function because we didn't have the tax base or anything to function at the level that we needed at a bare bones, very low funded level. So I would be a hypocrite if I said I didn't believe in the recapture because I feel like that's something that actually helps the entire system as a whole. It's just that what we're supposed to do, we hand recapture to the state, which equalizes our wealth back down to the very low funding level. We're funded at the bottom 14% of the state, and there are other school districts that are funded way up here. And so the money doesn't really help us any. It's just a very inequitable, and I'm sorry I said I wasn't going to get on my soapbox.
No,
But
you
anyway.
we are advocating to the legislature to change Robin Hood from a one-year snapshot look and hit you with the penalty to roll it in over a multi-year payment plan, and that would not be as detrimental. And we are fans of equalization. We paid, and we're paying more, but that's okay. It's the fact when you get a product price that changes its number 80% in 10 months.
Well, we also pay recapture according to prior year values, which is what is really what hurts about recapture. Because on the years that your property value is rising, that's not a big deal because you're paying recapture according to a percentage of what you earned brought in the year before, and that's easy. But it's the years that you're on the downturn, which is what is killing a lot of school districts. I mean, we're okay because my business manager and I saw it happening. We actually, though, we're like, it's going to happen in 20 years or so, and we'll be retired, but for the best of that, you are still going to live in this community, and we don't want them saying, what happened? Oh, it was that superintendent back then, so we're like, nope, we got to pretend like it's going to happen. We've got to make sure that we hang on to that money, as best as we can, and because in 20 years from now, when the property values decline, we're going to be paying big chunks back and have less coming in. So we've got to survive through those deficit budgets. And it would take us probably a couple hours to really explain the current school finance system to you, especially in a manner to which we could understand it. It's very complex.
Other questions?
I do have another question. It relates to the impact on schools. I assume that the increased property tax or the revenues that you derive from the increased values of properties is driven to some extent because people coming in are renting property, so they're paying towards that through their rental, right? Well, the owner of the property who's renting the space to the people who are coming into the community and who have children who they're sending to schools, they're actually making a contribution to the revenues that are coming to ISD.
Oh, yes.
Okay, so to sort of come back to the issue of potential contribution, what's the ruling about facilities if somebody makes a donation for facility improvement? Is that also subject to the Robin Hood laws?
No,
So
not
that's
at
one
all.
way that companies could say, we'll make a $20 million contribution, or whatever.
Sure. Sure, that would be awesome. We love that. Another thing, though, that did help us is our own royalties that we were earning. That was not subject to recapture either. Although we found out that we had to pay taxes on it. Odd, but that was nice.
I find it interesting that 3 of the 4 of you on the panel here live in areas where we've had seismicity. Have any of you had personal experience feeling it? Did you have any damage related to it? Have you had any, reports? Because that's a critical issue that we're trying to consider here.
You mentioned earlier on Venus is in our county. We've had a tremendous amount of tremors. I call them tremors. They did, I'm not for sure I'm correct on this, but they did shut down, I believe, 2 wells that were in the fault lines. One of them was in Cleburne, outside of Cleburne, just about a mile, and the other one I heard was up around the DFW airport. And the seismic activity did decrease from that. Now that all the fracking has pretty much gone away in Johnson County, we had one seismic event recently. It was it's a pretty good seismic. It's like 2.8, I think, up around Mansfield, Texas, which is just to the north of Venus, or northwest of Venus. So I'm not a scientist, but I'm going to tell you, I've been in Cleburne my whole life. We did not have seismic activity until the fracking started.
I thought a truck hit my building one day. One morning, 6:45, I'm sitting at the computer and I'm like, whoa! And I ran outside. I could even picture who it was that hit the building. And I run out and look around and there is nobody outside. So I run back in and get on Facebook. Let's see what happened. And it was Kenedy's here and Bashing is way out here. And it was actually an earthquake in Bashing that we felt in Kenedy, and we felt 2 of them. Felt a few in California, but that was really weird, feeling it in Kenedy.
No more questions?
So Dave, do you want to, so why don't you go ahead and round this down, if there are any more comments from the panel, or Jean, whatever is left, and then if we're about finished, then we'll let
If
David
anybody wants
adjourn
to
us.
send donations to housing authorities, please do. We have no other way to make revenue. We would love the donations.
I think we'll wrap it up. Just give the panel a hand and